Welcome back to my channel. If you have been here before, thank you so much for tuning in again. If you are new, be sure to subscribe. This is a channel that gets into a couple of different things. We talk about self-growth, but lately we've been having some phenomenal guests on here, and what our guests are doing is sharing wisdom. They're also sharing their stories, their transformations, all of the great things that's happening in life. And so I hope that you guys are going to be inspired by being able to listen into this episode and also checking out other episodes. Today, we are going back to my high school days and bringing one of my friends, one of my good friends, into this very, very talented Mr. William Brooks. Are you Dr. Brooks yet?
So we are actually in the final chapters of that. So that'll be coming soon this month.
Okay, so soon to be Dr. Brooks. So we're gonna call him soon to be Dr. Brooks because he is on his way, y'all. Very talented, very talented. Is into a couple of different things. Just balancing life, I would just say it's a lot of different moving parts in his life. He wears a lot of hats. But I feel like I don't want to do this justice. So I'm going to ask Will to share with you guys just some of the things you're doing, what you have going on, and who you are.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. I mean, friends can't even describe it. You know, we are family. We've been doing this
Yes.
since we were kids. But I am Will Brooks. I am originally from Detroit, Michigan, born and raised. I moved away from Michigan to pursue education and ended up in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And I've spent a lot of my life, my adult life there. And most recently, my family and I have moved to Albany, Georgia, where I serve as the director of bands at Albany State University. I have a beautiful wife, Miss Shannon Brooks, and a son, William Brooks IV. And we are navigating this beautiful thing that we call life here together, living in two different states. So we go back and forth between Tennessee and Georgia, and we're blessed to be able to do that. And I'm just honored to just be able to serve the community that I serve. Of course, as I said, currently I serve as the director of bands at Albany State University, where I get a chance to mentor and pour into about 130-ish young, beautiful minds. And I think that it's just so important to be able to pour into them because at this point, you know, they're crossing that threshold of adulthood and things are getting serious for them. You know, life is starting to life. And for a lot of them, you know, you are that person that they depend on to move forward. So right now, I'm on a mission from God. You know, it's not about money. It's not about a job. It's not about occupation, but it's about having an opportunity to help some young people that need the mentorship navigate this particular phase of life that I feel is significantly important to their future.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you again so much for being here. And it's just mind blowing to see how many different things you have going on right now and how your family is in between two different locations right now because you and your wife have big things going on and your lives are moving constantly. And, we were talking in our pre-discussion, y'all. We do pre-discussions before the podcast, me and my guest. And one of the things we mentioned was like, we have been, being from Detroit in the inner city where, it's a lot happening. We have been exposed to so many different things and we've been fortunate enough to be protected from so many things. And so you said, one of the things that is important for you right now is being able to give back to inspire young minds. And that speaks volumes to the conversation we're having today because we're going to be going into talking about relationships, friendships, mentorship, and just how important that is. I think that I'm excited to have this conversation, particularly with you, because I've seen, somewhat of how mentorship has shown up for you and how you've been able to just sustain and pour into your relationships over the years and how rewarding that's been for you. And so just to kind of get into it, what would you say are some key elements that contribute to building and maintaining strong relationships throughout different stages of life?
Ooh. That's a loaded question in itself. So, you know, when we think about life, we think about phases and changes because it's constantly evolving. You know, nothing stays the same forever. There's always some type of change. And it goes the same with relationships as well. You know, we've always heard the saying that people are in your life for a reason or a season. And a lot of times, you know, that's determined by communication.
Yeah.
So, for instance, one of our dear mentors, we refer to him as our pops, Mr. Smith, that was our high school band director. He's always been supportive of us when we were kids. But of course, when we were adults, we went off to school and he has to continue on with the next generation of kids. So the expectation for him to keep up with us is kind of a unheard of thing because he's got a whole new generation of students that he's got to pour into and mentors. I feel that we have the responsibility to keep those close to us that are dear to us and check on those that are dear to us. And, with life changes and stuff, even simple phone calls here and there just to check in are so important. Those relationship dynamics change as well. I also think about, family and friends that are back home in Detroit who are dear to me, always will be dear to me, but I just don't get a chance to see them or speak with them as often. And I don't think that that necessarily changes the quality of the relationship. Uh, for instance, we are family, we're great friends. And, sometimes years ago and we don't get a chance to speak to each other, but when we do talk, it's just like it was yesterday. We're just catching up on things that we've missed and, making up for lost time. It's so important to develop and maintain those relationships, especially as you're going through different phases of life, because you just never know when people may need that strong support, may just need to hear your voice just to have some familiarity as they're navigating new times.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. I love that. Just hearing, how important relationships are to you. And one of the things I thought you said that stood out to me is that, we're constantly growing, we're constantly evolving as people, right? Like, especially as you're in your adult life, where you started at as a kid, you just, you living with your parents or your caregivers at that time. But you have to make a life for yourself. You have to grow up. And when you're growing up, you're moving through different things. You're like, I'm trying to build for myself. I'm working jobs just to survive. I'm moving into career spaces. And so our friends are also evolving. Our family is also evolving. And I think I'm a flip what you said and how I look at it, but I'm gonna bring it back. But I think like one of the key things is just not to look at a relationship as an opportunity to damage it because it's not what you felt like it should be. Like we're not talking every day, maybe like we used to. You don't have to talk every day like you used to, but also like you can miss that person and not do something to sabotage that relationship. And so that's one of the ways I like to protect relationships is just by letting them be, letting them grow and evolve naturally. And to your point, there are friendships that, 20 plus year friendships, when we get on the phone, it's just like it was 20 years ago. And so, or we see each other, the love is just so transparent there. Like you cannot miss it. And so I love that. And then being okay with the evolution of friendships changing in intensity, it doesn't like change the quality. Some people are going to be there every day at points, and then there's some people that you're going to have touch points a few times a year, and it doesn't mean they're less valuable to you than the people that are every day. Those friendships are constantly evolving. Those relationships are constantly evolving. And so as long as you kind of see the strengths in that person's role in your life and they're not, doing anything to put you in harm's way, I feel like that's a no relationship that you can hold on to and cherish.
Absolutely agree with you.
Yeah. I I also, speaking of just the growth that happens and just the personal development over the years, how do you feel like individuals can balance, personal growth, career demands, and relationship commitments over time? Because that changes all the time for us.
You know, there's just it's a constant juggling act. A part of me wants to say being consistent, but you can't be consistent because things change so much. So, for instance, with my career, with my family, and with my wife, and I'll just use those three categories because I can't say family, wife, and group them into the same because those are different dynamics and different relationships. My wife needs individual attention outside of doing things with her and my son and I. My wife needs different attention than, having a family over for dinner and my mom's and my siblings and everybody's there. There's a different relationship that has to happen that's just intimate. It's just her
Yes.
and I. So I find myself in my position now, basically doing this juggling act and running back and forth for everything because, of course, the number one thing is the wife, you
Mhm.
know, happy wife, happy life.
Oh, no,
And,
that's great.
she's the backbone of my family. Like, she really makes sure that things are in order for myself. She keeps everything in order for my son. Our son is homeschooled because we live in multiple states. She
Right.
is a teacher. She's a mentor. She's a counselor. I mean, she wears so many hats. So,
Yeah.
I try my best to find time to, number one, make sure that she's included in everything that I do with the career. When we're traveling, the band's going here, I always want to make sure that she's there, and we get that quality time together. In addition to that, when things aren't going on in the career, making sure that I'm finding times to make sure that we're getting a chance to go out on dates and be
Yeah.
youthful and be playful around the house, and, just do things that just keeps us smiling and happy.
Yes.
And, same thing with my son. I have to find unique opportunities to bond with solely him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He needs that individual dad attention. So where, I'm teaching the things that he needs to be a young man, and the things that he needs to do to be responsible, and to
Mhm.
understand how he has to balance the things that he loves to do. Because
Yeah.
of course, with him being homeschooled, he doesn't have the same structure, the same infrastructure of life that a lot of other kids have. So teaching him that you have to be responsible for doing your schoolwork from this time to this time, and you've got chores that you need to do. You need to take care of this, and trying to find that balance for with him. Because if I left it up to him, his life would consist of being a drum major for a college band and playing with Legos, and that's it. That would be it forever.
Right.
So for me, it's finding unique ways to identify each category, and tend to each category, making sure my son's getting his attention, making sure my wife gets her attention. And of
Yes.
course, with wanting to be successful in your career, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot,
Yeah.
and that's a family effort. My son contributes to the success of my career. My wife contributes to the success of my career. They're so supportive. They're there for everything that we do. So I think that finding the balance is really prioritizing what is the most important need in that moment, and being focused and diligent in attacking what that need is, and making sure you're successful in that. And then going on to the next priority, always assessing to make sure everything is in order.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that was like so golden. I think when I hear that, it's very clear that you have a strong value system that anchors you. And I think that's super important because, life can get really busy, can be chaotic at times. But when you have that strong value system that anchors you, you can organize your priorities based on what that pre-existing value system already is. And then at different times as life is evolving, you can adjust that value system. And one thing I always say that I'm moving away from, or I'm moving into, I would say, I'm moving into dismantling this idea that we have to wear all of these hats all at the same time. I don't know about you, but a bunch of hats on my head don't look right. And so, and how many like things can you really quality attention into when you're doing, when your head is in so many different places at once? And so when I hear you explaining, like the attention that you give to your wife versus the attention that you give to your family versus, the attention that you give to your career, your household, like these are all things that have separate priority times. And it's not to say when you're focused on this thing, those things are not important. It's just kind of saying that I can't focus on 80 different things at once. This is going to get my almost as much of 100% as possible. And when I'm in that mode, that's the only hat I have on. When I'm ready to go into the other mode, I take that hat off and then I put on the other one. And so let's not feel like you got to do everything all at once. It's not, I don't even think that's good for your mental health, but it's not really, you're not going to show up in the ways you actually want to when you're trying to do too many different things at once and think you can do them all at the same time. Yeah, move from thing to thing, understand your capacity, organize your priorities, and have a clear value system so you know what you're giving your time to, your energy to, and what you want to be able to show up in. I really love that answer. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, and I think you nailed it when you said, your reference to wearing one hat at a time. Like, if you're in career mode, be focused and be 100% in career mode, because the more you stretch that attention thin into different places, the
mhm,
faster you burn out, So, go
absolutely.
hard, and then leave work at work, and go home and go hard for family. And then when you go back to work, leave family at home. Of course you're there, but you have to just have that focus level to clearly identify the task at hand and attack it, diligently.
Yes. And I'll say this, because you just said that and it made me think, make sure you put you in there too. Like, make sure you put a priority for time with yourself because you can feel when energy's off in these other areas or where like, oh man, I have work to do in these other areas because maybe this isn't quite where I want it to be. I have a different goal I have for this. And part of us being able to reach these external goals with these different things we're doing is the work we're doing with ourselves so that we can show up in a way that's healthiest and that's at our best and be able to give to these spaces in a way that honors us. And so, yeah, absolutely. Make sure you in there too.
I do need to do a better job of that. And sometimes God will force that on me. Like
Yes.
yesterday, my family left to head back to Tennessee. I stayed back to work, and you know, I I woke up and the intentions were
Hmm.
I had this long checklist of things I needed to get done for work. And I got up and I just naturally started, cleaning up around the house and organizing some things. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm off task here. What's happening?
Yeah,
Next
yeah.
thing you know, I cleaned the patio off and I was sitting on the patio and I sat there and I started watching a little bit of football as I was going through some emails. And then it was less and less emails. And I was like, you know what?
You
I
getting
think
stuff
I'm
done.
just going to watch football,
Yeah.
and I got a little bit of good rest in, and I woke up today refreshed. And even though I didn't, accomplish everything I had on my checklist yesterday, I'm feeling really motivated about doing those things today. But I think that my body naturally wanted
Mhm.
some me time to just sit still and not think about that.
Yes. Yeah. And me time, the way Will explained it is perfect because it's not sometimes when people think about me time, they think they got to do something really elaborate and, just kind of bells and whistles. And I am not, hating on going the extra mile for your me time. I am all about that. But I don't want you to not get your me time because you're like, well, I got to go do it this way and I got to make sure I'm completely fly and I'm going to this big old thing. And it's just like, no, sometimes me time is I could curl up on the couch, nobody's calling my name, and watch something that, is just going to, I love like little thriller suspense stuff. Like, just watch something that's going to grab my attention and suck me into this different world for, a little bit. Or take a nap. Like, there are times where I just want to take a day nap as an adult. And so, understanding me time is just what brings you peace and calm in that moment. So, I love that. You're just like, I just moved through a couple of things, made some progress and got to relax in that space. When you think about friendships though, because we kind of talking about that relationship piece, but friendships, we've lived in several different states, but we still have friends in all of those different states. And so how can we nurture particularly long-term friendships despite the challenges that comes up, such as distance or time or just life changes?
Ironically, the friends that I have across the different states that we've lived in, we've always had strong enough relationships to where distance never affected them. There are people that we were in the band with in high school
Mhm.
that, when I come home, if we happen to bump into each other when I'm there, it's like we hung out the previous weekend,
Right.
that, oh, this person has been missing in action for a long time is like it's removed. And a lot of the closest friends that I have, I wouldn't say are transient, but they get up and move. So, they'll call and be like, hey man, I'm passing through Nashville for a weekend.
Right. Yeah.
Is it all right if I stop by? We spend some time together. So I'm just grateful to have friends that are willing to meet you halfway.
Yes.
It's not always a, hey man, when you come home, make sure you get by here and see me. It's a, hey, I know that you traveled all the way to get here. So tell me where you're going to be and we're going to drop by and bring something to eat and we'll sit and talk, or you can just pull up in the driveway and we'll have a conversation. So it's always good to just have friends that have understanding of what it
Mhm.
is that you're trying to do, because that's super important in itself to know what's the mission right now, what's the goal, why is it that we don't talk? And if I
Right.
know, oh, this person is trying to obtain a master's degree, they're really focused on a thesis project right now, or they're really
Yeah.
focused on getting this promotion at work, it kind of puts things in perspective, because there are times in life where you have to go into grind mode, and sometimes you have to remove, distractions. And, not that friendships are negative things, but sometimes, they can be distractions for what you have going on. If you spend time just, talking to your friends about, you know, stuff that's going on when you know that you got deadlines that you got to meet,
Yeah.
It can hinder you from that. So I think that just expressing what the focus is and being transparent in that and just having clear communication with your friends is golden to that. The friends that I talk to that are out of town, when they call me, they're like, "Hey man, how's the dissertation going? I know you got this going on." So there's that understanding that's in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I definitely don't feel like people intentionally have done things to damage friendships, especially those older friendships. But you said so many good things. I'm going to touch on a few of them that really resonated for me. Like that moment of clarity when you are the person that has to travel home. And I remember carrying this little guilt of like, oh my gosh, I got to make time for everybody because I'm coming home and, they haven't seen me. And I think I used to kind of do that, like literally block out hours of time just to drive around a little bit or invite people to see me. And not to say I don't want to see anybody, I do, but I kind of had to come to this understanding that like it took a lot to get here. And so if you want to see me, please make an effort to see me. I can't stress myself to driving this 8, 9 hours, whatever the trip was, and then driving all across the city to see everybody. Usually when I'm there, there's only two houses I'm absolutely going to stop at. And that's my grandmother's house and my uncle's house. And these are also people that when they come, regularly may come into town and see me. And so I want to, kind of like release that feeling of like I'm responsible for maintaining these relationships on my own because when I come to town, I have to go around and see everybody. And then also to your point, like being aware of where people are in their life. I feel like there was a time where went through a whole just like emotional detox, like a healing journey. And a lot of that involved not talking to people as much, right? Like, and it wasn't intentional. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to talk to them or no, I like did not have the capacity. There was just something going on. And so being able to understand that people are growing and evolving constantly and it's nothing personal to you and they're not, trying to like, that's why I say I don't damage relationships because it's not a goal to just be able to say, well, you're not talking to me every day, so I'm gonna create a beef, right? Like I feel like people do that. I have clients, I feel like people do that. They be really mad at, something changing on your end that they don't understand. And so I've been fortunate enough to like the people that I've known in the past have been graceful and just, accepted me for who I am as I went through those stages without necessarily bringing something to me. Now, what happens behind the scenes, I don't know. That's not my business, but what I see from people is grace, is, just compassion and patience. And I appreciate that. And I felt like I've been that way with people that have been going through their own journeys. To your point, you're in the education space. One time I asked somebody for something and they didn't respond. I literally later found out, and I didn't say anything about it. I just was like, oh, that was interesting because they normally would have responded. And I
Yeah.
literally found out they were pursuing a PhD later, and then they had a major health crisis, and so their memory was affected. And so I was just like, had I just rushed to react to that, I probably would have potentially damaged that friendship, not understanding that there's working things happening that has nothing to do with me. And so, person who seeks clarity and peace from God when I don't understand something, because as human, we're going to form an opinion, we're going to form a feeling about something. And sometimes that feeling is just based on in the moment, that's what I feel. But don't let that lead your actions because sometimes you really just don't understand. And I am always just seeking curiosity instead of just trying to come up with the answer. I don't know the answer and I'm okay with that. And if the answer, it'll come to me. Right. And so I love your answer and some of the points you made and really all of the points you made, but those areas really stood out to me. So I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can we build, sustain meaningful relationships across different generations within our families and communities? Because we have these pockets, I feel like sometimes of relationships where like this the older clan, and so maybe that was that sibling group, or they were first cousins, or these were people that went to school together. But there's opportunities to cross, like we go into the older generation or into the younger generation. Like how do you build and sustain that?
So I think the best way of building and sustaining those relationships is through attitude of servitude and humility. And what I mean by that is I'm really close to the elders in my family because I like culture, I like history, I like knowledge.
Yeah.
So I remember when my grandmother first moved to Tennessee, we would always go to church together. And after church, I would always bring her back to my house and we would get something to eat. And I just enjoyed just sitting and talking to her and listening to her tell stories about, my mom and my dad and when they were younger and where they lived and what they did. Her childhood, I was really invested in that because a lot of times that told stories about things that really related to me and who I am and why I'm the
Mhm.
way that I am.
Yep.
And I think when she realized that I was so interested in that, it made her excited about having those talks. So she would
Yeah.
share more and more. So, that's how I would look to gain wisdom from that generation
Yep.
and would share that wisdom with my generation. When I would talk to my cousins and things like that, I would let them know things that, grandma told me would happen and get them to understand the perspective and encourage them to do the same thing. And I would take that same wisdom, that same knowledge. And here's where the humility comes in. You got that younger generation to where, the family's all together, or, in my particular case, my students are around. And I sit them down and I have a conversation with them,
Yeah.
almost as if I was a colleague or a friend. So we can break down those barriers of this person is just here to teach me music. I don't need to talk to them about that. And what
Yeah.
ended up happening is when they see the value of you as confidant, then those dynamics change. That's when they start to tell you more about their life and they say, hey, this is what happened to me. This is what I'm going through right now. And then you take that same information that you get from your elders that was wise information for you and you pour it into that younger generation. So you're essentially, I'm focused as a bridge builder. I take
Wow.
everything from the older generations, I share it with my generation, and I pour it into the younger generation just to help them to navigate because a lot of times they don't have the communication connections with someone that's older in their family to get guidance, to get the knowledge that they need to figure out how to deal with the circumstances that they're facing in life.
Oh my gosh. That is so important. I don't think people understand the value in that. As I get older, I notice that I gravitate towards I love history, first of all. I will sit there and try to understand something and forget it and then ask more questions. So I know my husband be like, I know I told you this before, but especially like with the older generation, I think like when you see older people, you like forget that they had a whole life, a whole lot of adventures, a whole lot of like just life experience. And if you just have conversations with them, you can learn a lot and things can make sense. You can avoid mistakes. It's like so many different things. And one of the things that comes up for the work I do, especially with Black men, is not feeling sometimes as connected to that previous generation, like their fathers and uncles and they're telling them stuff, but like really sharing life stuff. So I really love like the way you kind of humanize yourself and just say, hey, let's talk. Let's talk as friends. Let's talk as colleagues. Let's just talk as humans. I have another episode that's with I have some allergies and they just are not letting up. Last night I got a sneeze attack and my allergies have been just biting me ever since. So if I keep like sniffing, that's what's going on. But like I have another episode with a teacher of the year in another state, and he says like the first thing he does as educator is he's like, I mean, I just talk about me as a regular person, like not my education philosophies, not the classroom rules, just who I am. I need you to know that I am a human and not a robot. This came, that came here just to tell you what to do. And so now you say that, that's what I'm also hearing. It's just like making yourself human and understanding like some of these things y'all think y'all trying to keep from me or, just exploring life. Trust me, I've been there and I want to just help you understand how this might play out, and when they feel like they can relate to you, they really listen. You find people that latch on. And one of the things I've seen with you over the years is like how, certain people have been super invested in and being able to provide guidance to you, but also how receptive you are, because that's key too. Like there's usually people out there that can help, but you have to be in a space where you're receptive to it. As a person, I'm not gonna call myself older because I feel like that's not what I am, but
Oh no,
as
we're not
a
older.
seasoned person, as an experienced person, I know, right? We're not old, but I can tell when you're not listening or when you're not able to take it in. Just, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to share it, but like I can see what you do with that, right? And so when I look at you and I look back then, I'm like, well, Will was able to get so many mentors and guidance because he was he was like a sponge for that. Like you always like soaked that in and followed those messages and tried to expand on those paths. And as a result, it's been able to contribute greatly to your success and the trajectory that your life is taking.
Absolutely. I think that the very best thing that I could have done was to humble myself and realize that you can learn something from anybody in this world.
Anybody,
As a almost 40-year-old man, I can learn something from watching my son, do his daily activities and stuff like that. If you just pay attention, there's a lesson in everything, and you have to be humble in order to be able to receive that message.
yeah,
So, always thinking that way, and always, I think that that was attractive for the older generations, when they would look and they would be like, you know what? He seems like he wants to hear what I have to say, so I'm going to say more.
yeah,
And that was so beneficial to me because the things that they were saying would help me. And,
yes,
sometimes the things that they would say wouldn't help me. There's always been the saying of, eat the meat, spit out the bone.
yes,
You
yep,
take the best of what it is that they're giving you. And if it's something that you don't feel applies or you don't think is the best for you, you know, you keep what's good and you get rid of the stuff that's not good. And, you see what works. And if it works, you stay adamant with it. And if it doesn't, you move on,
yes,
but you
yep.
have perspective.
I love that. We'll just explain to y'all the how. You can hear people when they give you a range of information. The how is important because, sometimes people get caught up in like that part of the message that they didn't really connect with or that they didn't really like. And then they dismiss the whole message. No, there's probably some like golden things in that message. There's probably some value and some wisdom in that message. Just chew the meat and spit out the bone. Like some of that, it's not going to apply to you. It's not going to be helpful. It's not going to make sense to you. You don't have to like internalize every piece of what they said. Find the part that is connecting to you, that does make sense, that might be helpful, and soak into that. And
Yes,
I love that. Like you can learn from anybody. Thing I always say that I'm like I am never above learning from somebody, and because of the way life works, right? There's always an opportunity to where like that, even that homeless person on the street that you're like, oh my gosh, what can they offer me? Like, first of all, they know how to survive on the street. So we, all these movies about post-apocalypse, if we ever end up in that, that person might be able to help you because they already have been in that space of like how to survive without the comforts of life and the resources of life and, just making it with the little and, whatever's there. So I'm like, find the value in everything that you hear. You might not even be able to use it right now, but there's something in that might be helpful and just something that can help you just expand your life experience and your wisdom. And there's probably going to be a point in your life where you can't use that.
absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, it's there. Sometimes we look at our kids and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing it. I'm
Yeah.
seeing that thing. I didn't, understand back then, but now I'm on the other side of it, right? Especially when you was a kid that was doing stuff and stuff was happening. You're like, why is this happening? Or why does, da 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 da? Or did I develop right in this way? And then you get over there on the parent side or on the educator side or something. You like, oh, they're doing it. That was right. Or, oh, that's why that happened. And it's so like full circle. My people look at those younger
Absolutely.
generations. I love that. Will, have you ever found a time in just how you moved through years and years of friendship where vulnerability became an asset to the quality of that friendship or that relationship?
Absolutely. I'm seeing that right now. My father was recently diagnosed with a sickness that could potentially be permanent.
Oh,
It
wow.
could be something, it could be rough.
Yeah.
But I was vulnerable with my students. I told them what was going on. They seen me shed tears. And since that moment, there's been this outpour of students coming saying, hey, I'm going through this in life. And, I think, can we pray together? Because, I got this going on and we support you. So I've just been seeing them really, really show up since I've shared that information with them. I
Yeah.
was vulnerable to them. And at that point, it's like it opened the floodgates to where so many different conversations have been had with students that usually aren't very vocal have pulled me to the side and expressed some things to me that were life-changing perspectives for me because I had no idea that they felt that way or that they were experiencing what it was that they were experiencing. And
Oh,
those conversations would not have come to fruition had I not had that vulnerable moment and shared what I was experiencing with them. And this is even a new journey for me. I've always been vulnerable with my students, but there's something special about this particular class of students, this particular year, and what it is that's happening to where I'm still trying to understand it myself, but I know that it's something significant that's happening. But it's just changed so much. They've been so expressive lately, and I think that is going to definitely benefit us moving forward.
Wow. Just I think when you vulnerability opens up you to see other sides of people. And I always say vulnerability is risky, right? Because you don't know what you're gonna get back. And a lot of times what you're giving is a very sensitive part of you. And I'm really sorry to hear about what's going on with your father. I did not know. I hope everything works out with him and his health and your family, can band together and navigate that. Because I just went through a similar situation with my in-laws, so I totally it's a lot that comes up for
Yeah.
so many people. I commend you for taking the risk and being able to say, let me like this place is the place I feel safe and feel ready to open up about this and invite other people into this part of you and allow them to also show you different sides of who they are and allow you, I feel like that also allows your relationship to grow in a unique way. That sometimes it's not a way to like explain it. So, I could Google right now, how do you form a friendship or how do you, da 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 da, right? That is not something you can find step by step. Like vulnerability is a very sensitive and unpredictable a little bit and risky type of thing to get into, but it's necessary. I always say it's necessary. Have to be vulnerable to grow. Wow, I didn't know how you were gonna like what your outlook was gonna be on that. That I totally did not expect, but I love that. I love that. Like you gave them a piece of you modeled that. You gave them a piece of you, access to you in a space that was honest, authentic. You didn't say, well, they're too young, they can't understand this. They're not my family. They were there.
Well, you got to understand that this generation is different than our generation.
That's
There
true.
will be times where if you show that you were vulnerable or you cried in front of someone, that
Mhm.
would be a sign of weakness.
That's very
That
true.
would be a sign of, oh, you need to man up. You need to do this. That's not how life operates. Things are different now. When
Yep.
we were growing up, I never heard the term mental health. I've never heard that term until years later on in adulthood. People were struggling with mental health growing up, and we would never know because it wasn't a thing. It wasn't something that light was shed on. It was, hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, do what you got to do, or you're weak. You know.
Right. Yeah.
So this generation isn't like that. They could tell us don't do this, and we just wouldn't do it. But this generation wants to know why.
Why? Yeah. And I
Why
understand
can't we
why.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I ask my parents why and they ask me to do something, who knows? I could lose my lips. They might get slapped off my face.
A frequent conversation because I'm like more on the gentle parenting side, but my kids like to test that sometimes. And I'm like, my gosh, you would have got Daffy Duck smack, his big
Yeah.
on around his
Like
head.
I could have lost my lips. But I encourage my son to ask questions and to ask why. So when I ask him to do something, he knows he has to do it in a respectful way. You can't just say why when I say do something. You be like, hey, Dad, why do you want me to do this? At that point, I'll explain to him the reasoning because a lot of times in life, if you understand the reason why you
Yes.
do something, it makes doing it a less daunting task because you
Right.
have motivation and understanding of the end
And
goal as
buy-in, like
opposed to do it
you
because I
might
said
exactly.
we see that in HBCU bands. There's these traditions that are in place,
Mhm.
and they're some of the silliest things in the world. And
Yeah.
hey, why do y'all do this? And when I figured out the reason why, I was like, well,
It
can't you
started to
just
make
do this?
sense.
That doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
when you put things into perspective and you start getting rid of the silly stuff, and you say, no, this is what we're going to do, and here's why, and they understand the perspective, there's no objection. There's, oh,
Right.
we're doing this because this is what's going to happen.
Right. I need people to understand this about HBCUs. I don't know why I'm compelled to say this right now, but because of what you just said, HBCUs has such a rich tradition, and anybody I can speak for myself. I can't speak for everybody else, but as a person who has been able to be accepted and be a part of the HBCU and participate in a activity that has its own reputation and history, that's an honor. And so like, you don't have to humble me to be here because I'm already honored to and humbled to be here. I already feel really good about just being able to be in this space because everybody can't be in this space. And I think they feel like there's a task, you know, like, oh, we got to make you be this person, you know, so you can appreciate that you like the things you have to go through to get in these spaces are humbling enough. And so I feel like as long as you're intentional about what you want people to understand about this space and you set the record straight, because I do think some people come in there with the wrong idea and you just stay consistent with that, you probably can get a lot further in their growth than just trying to humiliate them or embarrass them or hurt them, you know?
And
I don't
that's
know
what's
what.
important. You know, at the end of the day, the whole point of this is growth and development. And the best way of getting there, the quickest distance from point A to point B is a straight line. You
Mhm.
know, if we can get rid of the detours and the waving paths and go straight from entering to growth and development, you got to cut the fluff out. You know, you have to make things as clear as possible. You have to be transparent, and there needs to be a mutual understanding of this is the goal that we're trying to achieve. Anything outside of this is a distraction, and we need to remove it.
Yeah. I also like what you said about this new generation, the new awareness of mental health. And I don't know, this has been coming up a lot in recent podcast episodes, maybe because the movie came out this year. Movies that do a good job of explaining emotional health, I like, you know, and so Inside Out 2 came out this year. And I went back to Inside Out 1, and I said this in another episode. So if you're watching this and you like, I heard her say this, I'm saying it again.
Yeah.
But Inside Out 1, when I watched that years ago, I remember loving the character Joy. I don't know if you've seen Inside Out 1, but I was like, oh my gosh, she keeps everybody together. She makes sure this kid is happy and they're on track and this, that, and the other. And then 10 years later, 2 is about to come out. I don't know how many years. I think it was 10 years later. 2 is about to come out, which is this year we're in 2024. And
We
so
got this new
I had
character.
watched 1 to watch 2. So I was like, let me remember, you know, what 1 was about. And my reaction was very different. I ended up actually liking the character Sadness more when I rewatched it. And not because I want you to feel sad or anything, but the story that they told and the clarity that I got from the way they told that story is that all emotions are very important. And trying to force positive emotions on people like that, you know, you can't cry, toughen up, pull your bootstraps up, right? Get it together, right? Don't acknowledge those emotions that are difficult actually ends up being toxic and damaging to a person's emotional health because when they can't acknowledge and validate and process the emotions they're in, they don't go away. They actually come out in different ways. I don't know if you remember, but Sadness kind of went on a rampage for a minute in
Yeah.
my end of that movie, core emotions that were attached to joy, right? Like just the first time I did this or that kind of thing ended up also being attached to sadness. Now a core memory has 2 different emotions. And because she had moved to a new place and when she thinks of those times, she gets sad because she's no longer there. And so I love that they kind of made it very clear that like the goal is not to be happy all the time or to feel only this kind of emotion because that's, you know, what you want to feel. The goal is to understand that there's a range of emotions and life is going to present all of those emotions to you at different points. And it's okay for you to have those. You want to have those. It humanizes you. You can work through those. You can process those. It may unlock things for you. And so I love how you said that, like just being able to connect with the previous generation actually is healing for us because we're like, this may be the first time we could say some of this stuff out loud to our peers or to people that are around us because in our youth, this wasn't as acceptable, right? This was not the culture of emotional health and addressing those different kind of feelings. That's powerful. That's super powerful. And then creating space for them to do that as an adult, somebody who may have a little bit more wisdom, who can be able to provide a little bit guidance. Speaking of that, everybody, mentorship is not created equal.
Yeah,
Mentorship
that's
is.
correct.
So, how can somebody identify the right mentor and what qualities should they look for?
Identifying the right mentor. Number one, you want a mentor that has showed characteristics that you desire. It's very rare that someone is married and you look at your uncle that's on his 6th wife and you be like, you know what? I want my uncle to mentor me in marriage. For me, I would be like,
Right. Maybe what not
I'm
to
gonna,
do.
I'm gonna look for someone a little more suitable for this job because I
Yeah.
think that they're still working at this thing. So finding someone that has proven success in what it is that you want to do. The best mentor for you to be a great husband is to find someone that's a great husband.
Yeah.
The best mentor for you in being a great educator is to find someone that's a great educator. And, even from a spiritual perspective, I don't know anybody that goes to a church and be like, you know what? I can't stand that pastor. All he do is drink and cuss and fuss. I want him to lead me. So you find someone that is ideal in the success that you want to have. And you show yourself number one, humble, because in order to gain that's a two-way relationship. You
Yes.
know, if
Mhm.
you want them to be the mentor, they have to want you to be their mentee. They have to desire that. And oftentimes approaching that with humility and clarity and what it is that you desire is so important because when they see that, when they see the value in this is what you want to do and this is why you want to do it, they're a lot more likely to embrace you and say, okay, well,
Yeah.
if this is what you want, let's do that. I've got a mentor. His name is Dr. Kevin Davenport. He's
Right.
a phenomenal band director, a phenomenal man of God, and he's not very popular in the band community because he's not really big social media and he's not, always in everyone's face, but he's super knowledgeable and just a gem to have to be able to call upon. And he's taken interest in me and he pours into me. And I'm so grateful for that. So simply because he's seen how much I wanted to learn. He's seen how much I desired to be better. He's seen how I took the things that he would suggest and I implement them. And I showed that, I would follow up. I would say, hey, this
Yeah.
worked for me or this didn't work so well. How can we make this modified for it to work? He was just always willing to work with me and work for me. So I think that the most important thing is finding the right person and approaching the situation the right way. Once you do that and that connection is formed, they typically tend to want to pour into you because they see
Yeah.
that you're hungry for it.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, I think that is one of the best answers for that because you're not looking for them to do something for you when you first see it. You just like aspire for what they have been able to accomplish or what they seem to be doing well. And I think that the ability to aspire is a conflict to jealousy. Like sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this, but as you move into different spaces of success, people who maybe have not reached that level of success sometimes like, kind of do they think they're better than me? Do they, da 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 da, right? They kind of go into these places. And I have found that one of the things, like I first of all I haven't felt that way. When I see somebody that's successful, I don't be like, oh my gosh, look at them, da 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 da. I'm always like, how do I do that? Like my eyes get all big, I'm all like interested. And I don't mind asking the questions. I don't mind just sitting back and just watching to see, how can I grow in this way? Taking notes, along the way. And I would say that to anybody who is sometimes kind of conflicted with yourself as you're seeing somebody who is accomplishing things or doing things that you may want to do. That's maybe an opportunity, right? Like seeing somebody and being able to possibly have access to somebody who's doing some things that you're interested in, maybe an opportunity for that mentorship. And then the inspiration comes. Like then they may be able to pour back into you. They can inspire you. They can, kind of help you develop those skills and those tools. That is not a requirement of anybody who's doing things successful. That is an option if they want to do that. And if you're interested in that. And so I like the way you explained it because it wasn't really a forced thing. It wasn't an expectation thing. It wasn't like, this person has this knowledge, so they're supposed to do this. They can, or this person, they are able to do this. And so in some way, like I'm gonna say this from the mentor side and the mentee side, like I have this knowledge, so I gotta give it to these other generations. No, I don't give stuff to people who don't want it because it makes you wrong. It doesn't help you. And then, and I know you're going to get into that in a minute. I'm trying to be careful how much I say, but on the other side, right? Like just because they know it don't mean they got to share it. Like that is not their obligation or duty. And if they may be doing it in a way that honors them, but like don't just be like, well, they got to feel entitled to what they have or knowledge they have because it's still optional. People have the choice to share or not share or be in the place to give or not give.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. And, that's where that humility comes in because when you're humble in your approach, it's almost like a relationship, you see a girl that you're interested in, you better have your best A game coming forward, if
Mhm.
you desire to get that girl's number. Same way with mentorship, when you approach it with humility, you're going to broaden your chances of them saying, you know what, I do this. I help this young brother out because they don't have to.
They
They can
don't
just
have
work,
to.
no, I don't got time for that. I got too much going
And
on.
sometimes they're willing to if you ask. Like some people think that it's just gonna happen because they wanted to and they're willing it to happen. It's like all you got to do is initiate a little bit and they'll most likely meet you.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Has there been a time where, you have had a mentor influence your personal or professional growth? I mean, I know there has been because you just talked about it a little bit. But what were some of the key lessons that you learned from that?
Of course, a high school band director was an amazing mentor, and
I'm still learning lessons to this day. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
yeah, you eat the meat and spit out the bone. He's goofy. He would do a lot of stuff that I'd be like, "Come on, pops,
That's
why are
how
we
he
doing
got to
this?"
relate to us back then because of
Yeah,
that. We were,
yeah. So to this day, I'm still learning those lessons and learning from those experiences. And I mean, my mentors definitely affect me in a positive way. You look at what they're going through in their career because when you approach them to mentor you, that's one particular snapshot. That's a screenshot of where they are in life.
yeah,
They still face trials and tribulations. Things still happen. Things still come up. They get new administrations, if they're still teaching, they get budget cuts. They experience things. You get a chance to see live action some of the things that they're experiencing if they're vulnerable and they share with you and how it is that they're dealing with those things and handling those things that they're sharing with you. For instance, I talked about how I shared, some of my health concerns with my students, in regard to my father and, I was vulnerable with them. They're getting a chance to see me handle that live. They're getting a chance to see, okay, he's
Mhm.
still handling his schoolwork. He's still taking care of business with us. He's still making sure his wife and his son are good and he's managing his emotion. They're getting a chance to see these things unravel in live time. And when you have a mentor that is still here, that is still active in whatever craft or whatever genre of mentorship that they are to you, you get a chance to see how they handle that. You get a chance to see how
Yeah,
they handle, having adult children and they're being rebellious and how they handle it, or
yeah,
they got family members that are facing health problems and how they're handling it, or you get a chance to see all those things live. So it's so important that we not look at our mentors as a screenshot and look at it as live. Think about it more as FaceTime than a screenshot because they're still living. They're still actively incorporating the things that they're telling you to do in live time. It's your responsibility to look at how that's working for them and take from it what you will.
yes. So golden. Oh my gosh. You mentioned our high school band director, and and I said I'm still learning. One of the things that I recognize from him is how he created space for everybody, and I feel like this connected to just his core value system of who he is as a person, as a man. And so, sometimes you can meet people and they give you nothing back, or they resist you, or they, whatever, right? But when you have a core value system that says, this is how I show up for um, everybody, no matter what, I am a person who presents everybody with decent human compassion and kindness, right? Then you don't have to pick and choose who gets that from you because everybody gets that. Obviously, there are certain people that gravitate to you more than others. And so, you may create more space for them. But just kind of being able to look back then, I'm like, nobody really had issues with him for real because he created that space based on just who he was and how he treats people for everybody. And also, just being a real person and not really kind of only presenting, well, this is what you do because I'm the teacher and I said so, right? Like we experienced scary situations. Like well, did we get shot at
Yeah.
in the bedroom? And he was
Yeah.
like on the podium, and you get to see. And another thing, what also you mentioned was being able to model that because sometimes when you're younger, you can't see exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it or why, but the seed is getting planted. right? So people are going to remember, oh, Dr. Brooks, because I'm calling you doctor because you come, it's coming. Dr. Brooks was going through all of these things, and he still was available to us, and he still was his best self. Like, I didn't see him change necessarily from who he is as a director or a teacher or an educator, or, how he interacted with his family. Like, all of the things I know him to be, he was able to maintain that because that's who you are. And you can model that for people when they get into these situations to say, well, how do I handle this? Am I supposed to change? Am I supposed to, like, whatever emotional space you're in, you're allowed to be in that. I'm going to say that. But it's very nice to see people navigate that and then be able to reflect on that and see, oh my gosh, it's inspiring to be able to say, I can probably get through this too, because I saw them get through that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the premise of it, never stop learning.
Yep.
So they never stop mentoring until they're gone. You never stop learning until you're gone. So just keep watching, watch how they're handling things.
Yeah, absolutely. How can a mentor-mentee relationship be mutually beneficial? I know you mentioned that earlier, like there's almost like a two-way street between the two, but how can both parties, what can they do to ensure that, there's success on both ends?
Well, a part of it is that level of humility. And if somebody's pouring into you, you should be wanting to return the favor. It may not be with knowledge, it may be with services, it may be with support, And I'll give you a key example. I keep going to my high school band director just because we were that close. But I remember when COVID happened, we were teaching online, we were teaching virtually at one point, and he wasn't very tech savvy, and I happened to be. So I'm going through teaching lessons and doing this, and he called me just to check on me. I'm doing pops. I'm doing fine, pops. How you doing? And he's like, yeah, I'm trying to figure this out. And when he found out what I was doing, he was like, send it
Oh,
to me right
right.
now.
We hope.
I was like, send what to you? He was like, come on, fix it. Teach me how to teach it like that. So, he was sending me what he was trying to teach, and I was helping him prepare these virtual lessons. And here, play this video, do this, do that. And, I helped him navigate that space of trying to incorporate more technology into his teaching, because that was something that I happened to have experience in that he necessarily didn't at that time. So, always creating opportunities to be able to give back somehow. You never know how much you can help. And that
Yeah.
can be something as simple as saying, hey, we haven't talked in a little while, and I appreciate you mentoring me. I'm going to be in town on this day. Can I just take you out to dinner? And just doing small gestures just to show your appreciation. It goes so far, as opposed to always give me, give me, give me. Can you teach me this? Can you pour to me that? Find ways that you can enrich them. And, if it's not money, then it's time. If it's not time, it's talent. If it's not talent, it's effort, support. Whatever it is that you can do to pour back into those mentors, you do what you got to do.
Yeah. And I like to look at that as opportunities for growth too, because usually it's a challenge or a new kind of, thing you may be going into to where you're like, I'm figuring this out along the way, or this is something I got to kind of brush up on so I can make sure I present this well. And so that's, just like we go through educational programs, we go through life lessons. This may be an opportunity for you to grow and being able to be presented with the new opportunity from your mentor to give back in some way, to be of service in some way, and figure out how to show up in a way that gives you also a new set of skills. I love that. And also just like not creating this culture or this mindset of people are only here to give to me and that's it, right? Like it's just a one-way street. Because I think there is a very deep message in that for especially people on healing journeys or people who are like in really difficult spots. Like, people are not planted on this earth just to give to you. And there should be you should be aware, right, that there are opportunities for you to give back to them. I know there are certain people, buying them a gift is not how to, show love to them, because they have more money than me. They probably already get all the stuff they want. And so me going to buy a gift is not going to be the best way to probably show love to them. But that is not the only way to be able to honor somebody or to give back to somebody or to show your appreciation. And so I love that there's so many different ways, being open to that and being thoughtful and considerate of how you can do that, and not really just seeing people as what can I get from now.
Yeah.
'Cause sometimes people, some relationships are so transactional like that, that that's where you can kind of see where the season may be ending because you're like, well, I notice I'm not as much of a service to them. And so they're not really, as available or coming around, all of that kind of stuff. And again, it's not a place for judgment for me because I'm like, people are in different places, but also I'm just encouraging you, right? To like,
Yeah.
of your mind
Yeah.
and understand it's a two-way street, right? Like when people are giving you stuff, there's something they're looking for as an outcome. And usually it's internal, but it could be just in your success or in your ability to accomplish this next step or in your ability to share a skill later, right? Like,
So now you're getting into people's love languages, and really understanding what that is.
yeah.
I remember one Christmas, my wife is an entrepreneur and she is a phenomenal entrepreneur. So we both grew up in Detroit. We both grew up not necessarily having a lot of money,
Hmm.
and we don't have value in a lot of materialistic things. And I remember one Christmas, I learned how to use video editing software because I was teaching virtually. And I decided that, I was going to make a tribute video for my wife as a Christmas gift, as opposed to buying her something.
Right.
And, when she watched it, I could just see the tears rolling down her face and the emotions. And there was so much more satisfaction in creating a video for her as opposed to going out and buying a Gucci purse or something like that. There was just so much more satisfaction. It didn't take me any money. It just took some effort. It just
Mhm.
took some time.
Yep.
So, finding the value in doing things like that as opposed to just running out and spending money and thinking that that's the solution for everything. Everybody don't want no gifts like that. You got
Yeah.
to figure out what their love language is.
Yes. As you say that, I think about also in marriages and deep relationships, how transactional the mentor-mentee relationship is. Like, hopefully, if you're in a long-term relationship or a marriage, you are growing with this person and learning from them, and they're learning from you. And so I'm hearing like almost that side of the, okay, this is another way I show my appreciation for what I've gotten from you, how much my life has evolved because of you being in it. And I really feel like it's a two-way relationship. There's things you get from your partner, there's things you give to your partner, and it just levels your life up. And how you show love to them, right? Is your give back and your appreciation tokens of, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here and I'm excited to see what comes next. Yeah, and that, I mean, this is not the episode for this, but I'm gonna just mention this because as I say these things, I just like, there's something to connect to that. That's why I say do self-work when you are in the relationship because what you bring to that relationship should be solid so that you can be available to receive what is a bonus from the other person. You do not want the other person to have to create you and the solidness in you and fill the holes in you, all of that kind of stuff. You want to work on that for yourself so that when you're in that relationship, you can appreciate the bonuses they give to you. They're not necessarily filling the hole. Because I couldn't help but, and now I couldn't help but think about a lot of memoirs and people's stories. And I couldn't help but think about how when I read Will Smith and he talks about, this time for his wife's birthday, all of these things he did. And one of them was making this video and he did research and he traveled and all of this different stuff. And she had such a adverse reaction to it. Now, granted, she told him she didn't want this kind of party and he still planned it. But it was like hard for her to even appreciate the efforts he made because, and she says it in her book, I read her book too. She was, in her own really challenging places emotionally. And so the version of her that presented was looking for him to give something to her that she was needing to give to herself. And as a result, they kind of had this tug of war at different times in their marriage with like, you're not available enough or this that and enough other enough, and he's like, I'm giving you everything I know how to give, and I don't know why this isn't enough type thing. And so but they seem to have come to a place of growth to where they understand that's not someone else's responsibility, that's a lot of self-work, and then you can compliment each other after that. And so that was a little bit off track.
I know exactly what I'm following you.
But I hope that was helpful and just completing that part of the message. But oh my gosh, Will, how can somebody, because mentorship, especially because you have been in both seats. You've been a mentee, you've been able to soaking all the messages. I feel like you're still in the mentee seat, but you're also on the mentor side. How can somebody transition from being the mentee to the mentor? And what responsibilities come with this role?
Ooh, that's a tough question. So there is no set moment when you transfer from being the mentee to the mentor. As I said earlier, I feel like you can learn something from anyone.
Mhm.
So at the point to where somebody can learn something from you, you can be a mentor, you know? It's about your understanding, your perspective of who you are and what you offer. And when you have that understanding of yourself as that mentor role, that brings responsibilities within itself. You know, I know
Yeah,
that there are people that are watching me. I know that there are people that will react to my actions.
yeah,
So that causes me to always second guess my actions, second guess my reactions to make sure that they're appropriate because I know I have a responsibility to those that are looking up to me without there being a definite time to say, okay, well, now I'm a mentor. You know, as long as you have something positive, successful, and helpful to offer to anybody, at that point, you can be a mentor. You know,
yeah.
it can be something as small as I'm an 8-year old and I have a 5-year old cousin that gets in trouble all the time. And I know that, you know, I mind my parents because that's what we're supposed to do, you know? So at that point, you know, you can help that cousin of yours that comes over that's always in trouble by encouraging them to follow directions and do better, you know, at following directions the first time that their parents say something. You know, that's a mentorship.
Yes, for
So
sure.
there's no age limit on it. There's no rules or anything like it. It can look a variety of different ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes being a mentor can be you know, I've had family members that have been incarcerated before. And although they did what they did, they were incarcerated. They used that time to better themselves. I'm
Mhm.
talking about taking classes, getting degrees, being a paralegal and helping those around them to fight their cases and to win their cases and get released from jail. You know, even in the confinements of being in a prison, you can be a mentor. You can really pour into people and you can really help people. So there
Yes.
is no
Yeah.
set way of what that looks like. There are no parameters to say this is the criteria for being a mentor.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's amazing the way you explain it. I don't know. I don't know if I thought there was a criteria, but now I'm like, oh my gosh, you just unlocked something. You're probably always potentially a mentor, whether you know it or not. If you have a skill or talent, or you just present yourself a certain kind of way, people are looking. To your point, like when you're in childhood spaces, I mean, I think in middle school, I was on a peer leadership team with the guidance office, or we were in the band, we were section leaders. Like people were looking at us, right? Like, and sometimes you sign up for it, sometimes you don't, but there's always kind of a stage to be aware of. And so that awareness piece I'm hearing is like key. But even if you are not signing up for it, if you are on a platform or a stage, people are looking. Like we're now in to this day, we look at these people that were influential in our childhood and we're on celebrity type stages, and then we're hearing these stories now about things that we didn't know about them, and that, like, oh my gosh, you were doing that. Like the stage don't actually turn off even if you think it does, because what you're not showing is still probably going to be revealed. And so choosing what kind of person you want to be, because there's always somebody watching, somebody looking, somebody potentially looking up for you, or looking for some kind of guidance or something, right? And so, yeah, some people I'm just like, what? You were doing that? Oh, wow, and it's coming out years later, and you're just like, I had no idea. You serial entrepreneur who seemed like you had all of this money and doing all of these great things. I'm trying not to say no names, but because it's a few, it's a,
Yeah.
but we see that, and then and not speaking of celebrity stages, there's also like just everyday people that are in the community, are in our families, that like they not necessarily saying I'm trying to be this, but they still have like the impact of people are watching you, are looking at what you're doing. And so it's almost like there's no set time, there's no set criteria, but there's probably somebody watching you. So be aware, of just how you're presenting yourself. It's kind of what I'm hearing in that message.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes you're a mentor and you didn't even volunteer to be.
You didn't even volunteer. You like, huh? You was listening. You was paying attention. My goodness. I probably shouldn't have said that. You probably should, just, but like, since life to me is always a growing thing, just learn as you go. Like, you might not have realized that the seeds are always getting planted. The eyes are always there, right? Somebody's always watching, and just be aware of that when you go into the bar and decide I'm throwing all these shots back, and you don't know how that's going to end.
Exactly.
But also have fun, grow, learn, just on the constant cycle of that, and value relationships. One thing I wanted to say that I've meant to say earlier is when I like this conversation a lot, and I like it with you because you live this, like you like definitely been in a space of honing into nurturing relationships throughout life. Almost everything we do in life is based on relationships, believe it or not. Like, it's not exclusively about talent. It's not exclusively about skill. It's not exclusively about your accomplishments or the things you can do, or, have done. It's a lot of things that we do are relationship based. And so be mindful of, what you are doing, the people that surround you, how you're treating people, because you just never know how that relationship connects to something for you and in your future.
Absolutely. Always have to be mindful. You have to be conscious because it's all relationships. There's a saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And
Mhm.
that's so true in a lot of cases because I've seen a lot of people be very, very talented, very, very driven, and other people are granted opportunities over them because of who they know. It's unfortunate that it's that way. You have to be, you have to be a dual threat. Number one, you have to be great at what you do if you want to be successful. And on the other hand of it, you have to establish and maintain the proper connections to get you in the right rooms, to get you in the right conversations in order to set you up for success.
Yep, that's it. I also read Viola Davis' book, and she talks about that. She's like, it's not, the way people become megastars is not based on, oh, this, like, it's a mix of luck and some other stuff. But you'll be surprised how many talented people fall by the wayside just because, like, they didn't get that opportunity or they didn't know that person. So that was huge. And you mentioned humility throughout this podcast episode, and just being a person who is receptive to growth all of the time, who is always ready to learn, a person who is never above, just, okay, everything. I've accomplished so much that things are beneath me. Like, being in a place of always willing to be a good person to everybody, a better person than you are today, like, will pay itself back to you.
That is my prayer and that is my hope. As long as what I'm doing is pleasing to God, I got endless of it in me. I just want to make sure that He's happy.
Yeah.
As long as He's happy with me, I'm cool.
Yes. 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 Okay, well, this has been such an enriching conversation. I feel like there was so many just sources of wisdom that was poured out in this conversation, and I hope you guys have been taking notes. But if you just want a little bit more, or you want just a little more help, or you just want to pay attention, how can people find you, get in touch with you, work with you, anything like that? Where are
Well,
you?
I'm pretty easy to find. If you want to find me on social media, my name is Will, Will, last name Brooks, Brooks, on Facebook. I offer a number of services outside of mentorship, anything music related, music production, music education, do film scores, music for plays. Yeah, so I stay busy in the realm of music, but more so in the realm of mentorship and helping people gain accomplishments, what it is that they want to do, helping you get into school, students get into college. Those are what my passions are. But as I say, you can find me on Facebook at Will Brooks or email me if you ever need any services at willbrooksmusic@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And people, please understand the mega talent you have here in front of you. He is very kind and very modest, but this is a extremely hard worker, one of the hardest working people I know, but also very, very big talent. Like, things he can do, you just couldn't imagine. And so if you are like anywhere interested in the world of music or something, he probably can teach you, help you, or connect you there. Thank you so much, Will, for joining us on this episode. Thank you so much to our listeners. Again, this is an episode that is for everybody. So share the wisdom. I'm always encouraging people to share this because we have lives to touch here. Also, share your feedback. I know there were some things said, there were some insights and just some outlooks on life that I felt like was learning opportunities for me or just new ways to think of things. And so I want to hear your feedback. So share your feedback, share this video, subscribe, like, and we will see y'all next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for having me.